All right, thank you guys very much. My name is Andy Galentine. I am the director of Startup Grind Austin, and I wanted to start out tonight just by thanking Curtis for working with us. He runs CoSpace. If you need co-working space, talk to him. I'd also like to thank Brian, who has graciously deigned to record this for us, and that means that it's going to be up on the Startup Grind website and hopefully mentioned in blogs and things like that, so feel free. Also, tweet, if you have any questions, tweet them to this hashtag, and when we get to the Q&A part of the day, I will pull that up, and then we can go directly from there. Or you can ask them directly, you don't have to. Either way. So I thought I'd start by seeing if there's anyone here who's been to a Startup Grind event in a different city. I know you haven't been to one here. So, one, couple. Me, I went to one. I went to a couple. Startup Grind started in the Bay Area about 3 years ago. Derek Anderson, who's the head of Startup Grind, left EA and started his own startup, not Startup Grind. And as he was working through this startup, he started meeting once a month with some other people he knew who were starting startups, and they just sort of got together and brainstormed, tried to work through issues they were having. Those meetings started getting bigger and bigger. They started inviting people who were more known, more successful at this to learn from. And he said, sort of before I knew it, the Startup Grind thing was bigger than the startup I was trying to do and learn from for Startup Grind. And he had this epiphany, and this is now his startup. And since he sort of focused on it as a startup, it's moved from being in just San Francisco, Palo Alto, and Los Angeles to now being in 12 cities. Actually, tonight is the inaugural night, not just in Austin, but also in Toronto, Canada. And Singapore started this month, so it's global as well as moving outside of California and the States. So I'm really excited that you guys came. The format of a Startup Grind is you network for a little bit. We have a chat with somebody from the startup community. Sometimes that's an entrepreneur. Sometimes it's an investor, someone who's worked within the startup community. Ross is a little bit of both tonight, so we're very lucky to have him with us. And without further ado, will you please give a warm welcome to Russ Buhrdorf from HomeAway. By a little bit of a way of background, Ross is a Longhorn. He went to UT. He got a degree in computer science. He's worked for companies like HAL Computer, Salient, Excite. He came to HomeAway when it was about 5 months old and has been with it since then, seeing it through all of its growth, its IPO, including a Super Bowl ad that generated about the second most site traffic of any Super Bowl ad ever. So it's certainly something we'll talk about how you managed that uptick. Last year he was named Austin CTO of the Year. So he's getting quite a bit. And I just wanted to start. You went to UT. Did you grow up in Austin?
No, I didn't. And I'm so happy to be here, you guys. It's flattering. So please ask questions, and I'm just excited to be here. No, I didn't grow up in Austin, but I've been here 30 years. I interned at a company called Data General. I don't know if anybody remembers Data General. Or have read the book, The Soul of a New Machine. It's when they took their 16-bit architecture to 32-bit architecture, and it saved the company. So I worked at Data General as an intern, and went to school at UT. That's how I started in Austin. So I've been in Austin for a long time.
And are you from Texas originally?
I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska, of all places, right there in the middle of the country. I went to school. I started school there, but it was pretty clear I was going to starve to death. So I thought I better get down to Austin, and I got an internship, which is a great way to start. I got experience at Data General, and I wrote, early in my career, I wrote microcode for terminals, glass tubes, on a 6809 microprocessor. You had to understand all the microcodes in a book about that thick. So, that was my first computer job in programming. I quickly got out of that, and I don't know, I'm not trying to show my age here, but just that I'm a geek. Then we built, at Data General, built one of the first MIPS workstations. So MIPS 1000 was a RISC processor, and that was a big deal. And that was one of the first workstations even before Sun. And then Sun came out and dominated the market at that point. So it's kind of how I got started.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you've been here since then?
Yep, been here since then. I've worked, you know, in the Valley, mostly in Austin. I've run remote offices for Excite.com. Yeah, been in both places.
So one of the things I noticed in your background is you were one of the first employees at HAL.
Mm-hmm.
Was that one of the first sort of technology startups that you worked at, or?
Yeah, I will tell you, I mean, on the whole startup thing, and I know people have regular jobs, this has kind of been my mentality, and I learned it early, and I had this lesson, you know. So I worked at Data General. I remember it was a big deal. Everybody got these plastic plaques when they hit $1 billion in revenue, and then, you know, 3 months later they were laying people off. And it was funny, I was intern, so I was there till the bitter end because they, you know, I was paid the least and I did the most because I didn't know any better. So it really taught me a lesson that there's really not any, you know, there's a false sense of security in a bigger company. I'd rather have control of my fate, be able to have an impact, and, you know, when you're funding, you kind of know how much money you got in the bank. When you're at a bigger company, you don't know when you're maybe let go. So that was early on. I couldn't equate the risk, you know, differential. So I just went for the startup. It was a lot more fun. And I think from Tandem, I'd made some, or from Data General, I made some connections and actually ended up at Tandem Computers, and there we built the first Unix fault-tolerant machine that still runs a lot of phone switches. So that's where it got into Austin. Then from Tandem, I started at HAL. And HAL Computers was it was purchased by Fujitsu years ago. They're still out there. That was the first 64-bit Spark chip. So this was when Sun was big, came out and did the 64-bit Spark chip. And I think what was exciting about that startup was that was the last computer company from the ground up to date. It was the last one. Apple was the previous one, and then this was the last one. We built everything from the ground. Every component. Yeah, from the ground up. And it was purchased by Fujitsu, and then after that I went to Excite.com.
And let's talk about Excite. One of the things that I noticed is you grew the team. I mean, I'm assuming from one person, which must have been you to begin with.
There's a few people there.
Yeah.
There's a couple people.
To a team of 90 that you were managing and working in both the Austin and Seattle offices.
Yeah.
For a company that was based in the Bay Area.
Redwood City.
Yeah. So how was that working remotely for a Bay Area company? Did you notice a lot of differences between the cultures in the different areas?
Well, I really ended up with a team of a couple hundred people. There were. You know, Seattle, it was an acquisition. In Austin, it was an acquisition, which is where I was stationed at. I ended up being the remote engineering manager. So I was flying a lot. You know, I think people, there seems to be, I go to these things in Austin, and it's, you know, let's make Austin as great as the Valley, or so there's always these comparisons. I don't think for me, there's not any difference in the, you know, really in the culture. I mean, I think I find hardworking, great engineers everywhere. I think, you know, the Valley has a lot more infrastructure, you know, a lot more, you know, it's got a huge head start. So you're never going to beat that, nor do I think you should try it. So I didn't really see any people in Austin work less, or people in the Valley work more, or people are depressed in Seattle because there's no sun or something like that. I didn't really see that. Any big difference, you know. I can't make a big difference.
Well, that's good. And it's certainly, I do see the infrastructure differences when I travel there. I notice that the support seems to be
oh yeah, I
much
mean
more
it's
ingrained.
from that
So,
point of view. From the
yeah.
talent point of view, I don't really see difference. I mean, it's more competitive in the valley, but I'll tell you what, it's pretty competitive in Austin. It's very competitive in Seattle right now. I've got a good sized office in Seattle, and it's as competitive as Austin is. There's just more going on. You can get involved in a lot more startups, and there's just a higher energy, I think,
Right.
just because it's going on. That's in Silicon Valley. That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about building that team and how you approach growing a team when you start, very early with just a few people and you end up with a couple hundred later. What sort of challenges do you encounter? How do you keep a culture consistent across that kind of growth?
Well, I mean, I think there's just practical. When you're in a startup, it's just practically, and if it's successful, like Excite was and like HomeAway is, you're really just trying to, tactically get things done. Mm-hmm. So there is certain stages in a startup where, you're fighting fires, you're going through rapid growth, where you're really looking for, in my case, either great new talent that I, discover, or, existing talent, folks that have already worked with me that I know that I can count on, and, you kind of divide and conquer, and you say, hey, go fix this. Don't talk to me, just go fix this. This is, ready to burst into flames. Let's keep it from doing that. And then there's some practicality of bringing in, always want to bring in the best talent, obviously. The best talent, I find, and I give a talk on it, but the best talent is, via your network, of course, so you can kind of count on, I know this person, they know someone else. You can bring that talent in, and you don't have to go through the how's this person going to work out? How are they going to work with the team? You know what to expect. So I think that's a huge leverage, and I think it's very important in a startup. I think the most important thing is the team. So, I brought in my folks. There's people at HomeAway right now that I've worked with for, 16 plus years through multiple startups, and it's a huge advantage, to just be able to bring in right now our, the lady that runs our database and runs all of our database infrastructure, which is millions of dollars, and 30 plus DBAs. I've worked with her for 17 years. Mm-hmm. So she was the first DBA I brought in, and I've never looked back. I've never worried about it. I've never, spent any time at it. I just said, you go handle this. So I think that's a huge advantage. So, that's the way you build a team. I think there's, for me, the heart of any startup and any team is bringing in that talent, hiring that talent, and then really giving that talent meaningful work or purpose. I mean, I think that, one of the ways it becomes a virtuous circle is if you've got a great team and you're doing great stuff with that team, and that means different things to different individuals, then great people want to work there. Mm-hmm. So, I use the kind of the three things I do when I'm selling a new candidate is, I said, hey, when I come into a new job, this is what I look for. I look for the boss. Is my boss good? Or is your boss going to be good? Because if you got a bad boss, forget it. Doesn't matter. It's over. So number two is, what kind of impact can I have in this business? Am I going to be empowered? Is this a small business, or is this a big business where it doesn't matter what I do, I'm not going to have an impact? And I think, and then third is the opportunity. So, good boss, I can make an impact, but is anyone going to buy the product, or what is it going to matter? Is it going to, have an impact on the world, or have some real meaning? So those are kind of the three things that I'm after. So I'm very intolerant of bad bosses. So I think it's, and when you're a growing company, you have to watch out for that, because the folks you hire are all super creative, super intelligent. It's not like you're going to trick them or manipulate them into anything. And then, of course, the impact is folks have to be empowered. And if you're hiring that kind of team, the kind of folks you want there are the people that want to be empowered, that want to make things happen. And then, of course, the most important one in all startups is, is there a real opportunity? And once you find that, you have to have those other two things in place. And I don't believe that there's, I think that they all work together, because, a good team that is impactful, can be in the right neighborhood of an opportunity or an idea, and they can, stumble upon it, or they can hone in on it. I'm a big believer in all the lean startup philosophy, and the minimal product, and really getting validation. So I think all those things go together. The big thing for me again is you've got to have meaning with a team, especially as it gets bigger, and meaning can be, we're putting out high quality stuff. We're not putting out garbage. I'm moving my career as an individual. I'm learning something. All these things are part of meaningful team membership and meaningful, because guys, we can work anywhere, right? There's plenty of jobs we're in high demand. So I think the difference that makes the difference for me is, is that meaning, or why am I doing this? And then ultimately, which is what I love about HomeAway and I loved it about Excite, is, we get to build product that people get to go on vacation about and have a great time, and we can look at all the pictures, and we can add value to to our customers, just a tremendous amount of ROI. So, you have to equate and connect that, and I think it's super important in startups, that early on you start making those connections. Is what value, are you talking to customers? What value am I bringing to the world and to the customers? And higher the ROI and the bigger problem you're solving, the better it is. So then that stuff, just becomes natural.
So a couple of things in what you've said, one of which is, how does that challenge of impact change? I mean, it's easy to think about when you're coming into a very small company, I'm going to have a lot of impact. There just aren't a lot of people here. When you talk about growing to a team of 30 DBAs, right, what do you tell that 31st DBA about the impact they're going to have? How do you continue to, motivate someone as your team grows?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I think it's just the same as when it was a small company. I think as the leadership, the manager of that DBA, the leadership within the team and the company, have to connect those things. And I think it starts with honesty about not over-hiring and having a lean team. So everyone that's on the team needs to have a meaningful job where they can have an impact. And that doesn't mean every job has to be, some nail-biting, stressful job. But you have to make the equation of what value is this team member bringing to the whole team, bringing to the company, and you have to connect all those dots. And ultimately it connects to what value we bring into the customer. But as you get bigger, or you need to make that equation, right? Is what value are we bringing to the customer? I think it's, I've heard we have a big focus on quality and excellence, and I think we really want to motivate all the engineers and all of our QA folks to, what value it's more about what value are you bringing to the customer, as opposed to is this feature or functionality working properly?
Right.
You know, it's that value proposition, and I think that, you know, that's what, you know, I want to instill in a team, and I think that's what turns on, you know, creative folks like, you know, software developers and entrepreneurs is, you know, how are we bringing value to the world? And you have to make those connections, because sometimes projects get big, companies get big, you know, how are all those pieces connected?
And so the second thing I wanted to touch on is you said, you know, evaluating the opportunity, and you've had some experience doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You've had opportunities to get in at early stages in a lot of companies. How have you looked at the company? How have you made that assessment of, yeah, I think this is an opportunity that I want to be involved in. I think there's a chance to make an impact on the world, really,
Mm-hmm.
with this opportunity.
Well, I think that's the last thing you said is you know, is important to me, because I think if you can see the clear, you know, value it brings to the world, then that makes it a lot easier for everyone. That's why when I looked at HomeAway, it was just, to me, it was a no-brainer. It's just like, man, I got to be involved in this. This is a fragmented marketplace. We make it a bigger marketplace. This brings value to the travelers, tons of value to the travelers, because they can go to one place. They get to stay in a house that's, you know, half the price. I sound like a marketing guy, but, you know, half the price of a hotel. And then we bring folks that have second homes. They get all this income. And, you know, Austin's become a huge, you know, it's become a place where folks are doing that, just like other towns and vacation destinations. So that one was easy. I could see that there was a lot of value there, and you know, so that was an inspiration. I think, you know, Excite was that one. I think, you know, How was another one, in that, you know, there was a strong need to be able to, you know, go into 64 bits meant you could address, you know, all the grains of sand on a beach. You know, so you could do big data problems back then that you couldn't do in a 32-bit architecture. So that was a big deal. I've also been on enterprise stuff that, you know, that was very unsuccessful, you know, in the automobile
Right.
industry in the middle of a downturn. So I think I identify stuff on just what, you know, what turns me on, you know, where I think there's real value, and then, you know, I'm always looking at the value, and then I think when I mentor companies, it's kind of the first thing I ask, and it's the first thing I ask at work is, have you talked to customers? Does anyone want to buy this? What's the value? I mean, I think there's some leaps in more mature businesses, or businesses that you know what work, and you know what the customer wants next because they're screaming for it, and that's easy. But it's really, you got to go out there and market, validate, and you know, I'm a believer of, you know, the lean methodology of get it out there, especially early on, get it validated. You don't need to spend a ton of money and figure it out.
So let's talk about HomeAway a little bit. You joined early, 5 months in. They had gone through many acquisitions.
Five by then.
Yeah.
The company started with 5 acquisitions.
5 acquisitions, and in your office, it's clear there have been just a few since then from the board in the reception area. How has that been sort of a different challenge than perhaps building a core technology from the start and adding on to it, kind of trying to bring these in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big difference, and it's a much different challenge. I think lots of companies get big. I was just talking to an accountant from Cisco, and you know, they've done tons of acquisitions and continue to do acquisitions. So bigger companies have the same issue. With us as a roll-up from the beginning, you know, it started with 5 companies. Now we've done 17, I believe, acquisitions. So the challenge is that it's, you know, I have colleagues that, have one or two platforms, and I think, oh man, if I had one or two platforms, I'd have it made. I've got, I don't need more, but started with 17 plus, and then in some of the acquisitions that are, a 20-year legacy of customers, they've got 12 or 13 platforms existing. So you really end up with, it's a completely different challenge. Mm-hmm. And it is a challenge, and it's a different problem. Right now, we are in the process of, we'll have around, a big chunk of our business will be on a single platform. We just did a big migration of one of our big platforms, and we're continuing to do platform migrations to do consolidation, and to get the scale and performance and it's a struggle sometimes when you're dealing with legacy technology to keep everybody engaged in that while you move the business forward. So you really do have this. You can't stop.
Right.
When we do an acquisition, it's like, boom, let's hit the revenue numbers. Let's continue to grow that business. How do we do that and migrate the platform? Some of them we do quick, some of them we do slow. It all depends. But ultimately, you need to get to a single platform and a big service orientation, which is what we've got now. Mm-hmm. So it's a different beast. It makes everything 17x complexity, and it's not just the technology. It's all the business too. How do you reconcile all the brands? How do you reconcile all the financing? How do you reconcile all of the systems that come together? So it's across all the different brands, and we're international, so that adds another level of complexity. So big technical challenges.
So the Super Bowl ad was, I think that was in 2009?
We did two of them.
Two of them?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember the Chevy Chase
yes.
family vacation.
We don't like to talk about the second one.
Okay. Well, then I will just focus on the Chevy Chase one. There was the second one? How did you guys prep for that internally? I mean, it was huge.
Yeah.
It put you guys on the map. I mean, essentially, really, outside of Austin, that's when I think people began to realize that you were there and really use the sites.
We did the Super Bowl ad because when you look at all the data, it has this huge reach. Basically, its demographic is everybody. So, when you do an ad like that, you get noticed. And the, the results for us is overall, we got rated number 2 that year on, performance, speed, visits, just everything. So, that was exciting. What we ended up doing, and there's a lot of learnings that came out of the Super Bowl ad that we've applied moving forward. So the challenge with the Super Bowl is, one, there's not many companies that have done it. So it's not like there's a book anywhere that says, hey, this is how you do a Super Bowl ad. And when we reach out to companies, they weren't particularly, it's hard for them, they weren't very helpful. And it's hard, it's a different set of problems for everyone. In our case, and in all Super Bowl cases, it's the amount of traffic is so high in such a small time frame. That's really the issue. So it's, you're off the scale, 100x in what you have to perform. So, the short answer is you got to turn your site into, a read-only, CDN across the world, HTML website. Now we did certainly, and we had all kinds of triggers in here because we wanted more functionality than just a read-only website. So we had all kinds of triggers. We spent money on network gear. Our hosting provider had to actually bring in new pipes into Austin so that they had more connectivity and could handle the bad bandwidth. We distributed all our stuff with Akamai, and we had switches in the, in our network that we could see the traffic coming through, and if it got over, we load tested all of our software, and we also did something that's we call brownout testing, which we do right now. So if any given service went down because of load, the site would still stay up. So, which is useful today because lots of things we depend on. If you guys are involved in any ad networks or anything, right now websites can depend on a lot of different stuff that's outside of your control. Websites need to stay up, and in the Super Bowl, we needed to stay up. So we did what we call brownout testing, basically unplug things, see how the website behaves. But we would load tested everything, and when it would go over a certain load, then we would go to a static mode of a website. But we had plenty of dynamic stuff that still worked. We did analysis on where the traffic's going to go and where we drove the traffic. So it was, multi-month, focused team. It was very exciting. We had a command center set up in the birdhouse, and everybody, the football, the Super Bowl was on, and we saw. Right. It was crazy. I've got pictures. We saw our ad went up, and then we had this big graph of the traffic, and it just, the screen just turned bright red with traffic. It wasn't just a pulse. It was just like bright red with traffic. So it was a great experience. We learned a lot about scale that we've taken forward.
Excellent. One of the things that I read recently is that HomeAway has sort of restructured how it's doing some of its teams. And there was an article about this, using teams that are product-like teams that contain sort of everybody needed, I guess, to manage that particular product line, instead of having a QA group that might work on all of them, having a QA person on a product line team. How has this helped do what you talked about earlier about getting that value out to the customer, managing, components in a more direct way?
We call it PLTs, and it's a product line team is the concept, and was brought from Tom Hale from Adobe, who's the chief product officer, brought that. We just hired him a couple of years ago, and he brought that concept. And the idea is, it's like a small startup in multiple. We have 20 plus PLTs, and they represent products in various forms and features and functions. And the idea is to have a small startup team that's self-contained, that makes the decisions. There's folks from QA, development, UI, design, product marketing, and the business, general managers and business control. And they get to make the decisions on how that product moves forward. Now we have a steering committee that sits over those product line teams that approves quarterly goals, that we say, here's the metric you need to hit. For example, if you're in the shopping cart team, here's what we want you to improve conversion. That's the metric. You guys do it however you want. And then there's incentives around that team so that they can, when they achieve those results, they get results in their pocketbook too. So I think the idea is to empower the smaller teams, as opposed to what I think bigger companies struggle with is, if you end up being a cog in a wheel of a bigger team, it's not very empowered. I'm not guessing any of you guys would be excited about that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So, the challenge is getting that empowerment down. As you grow to scale, we're now over 1,000 employees. We have 23 offices worldwide, so we're very distributed. And through the PLTs, they have regular meetings. This is what we're doing, and then we get alignment across the PLTs with our quarterly goals. That's how we align those. And program management will also get the bigger programs, but it works best when it's just you got the right team working on the right problem that's focused. Right. And then everyone feels like they can have an impact. That's the goal.
It sounds like you're giving them a good deal of autonomy. If you're saying, here's the metric, go meet it.
Yep.
That's very much what a startup faces. I need to figure out how to do this, and there's got 5 people here. Let's go do it.
Yep. So that's in the best case. I mean, you still struggle with some of the work is, plumbing work, but we want you guys to be the best plumbers and hook these pieces together. So I think that's how, you know, you make that meaningful.
There is plumbing in every
Yes.
every work.
Uh-huh.
So, one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about is Capital Factory and your investment in that and the mentoring that you've done there. You know, is there something, you know, how did you get involved with them? When did you start working with them?
It was just, I think we'd went public, and prior to that, I'd been reaching out to the, you know, startup community. When you're in a startup, and even today, I was just saying, you know, we're working as hard as we've ever worked before, you know, we went public. So in some cases, on different stuff, but just as hard. I just want to reach out and get the community. I mean, my big push is I want to give back to the community. I mean, that's how I get energized, is by bringing value to you guys and giving back. So I was reaching out. I got hooked up with Josh Bear over at Capital Factory. We've become good friends. And so I was a mentor last year. We've opened up a new space on the 18th floor of the Omni building. It's a co-working space. We copied you guys here. And, you know, Capital Factory is an incubator like Y Combinator. We run a few companies. We've got a couple of, one person here we've run through before last year. And so I just got involved to be able to, you know, give back. I think that, you know, that's how I get, I think it's better to give. It's much more fun, and you know, so it's great to see I get a supercharge out of helping companies. You know, if I can help in some way with some question that I already know about, or you know, can add value that way, I think it's a huge boost. There's no reason for you know, these young entrepreneurs or to have to learn it the hard way. If I've got some experience I can bring forward. So that's the fun. I get a charge out of it.
And do companies apply to join it? It's like a year program or a quarterly program? Is it, you know,
well, Capital Factory is gonna, it used to be, we changed it. I'm looking for help back here. It's not going to be over the summer. Last year was over the summer, right?
Yeah, so Capital Factory previously was a 3-month-long accelerator program.
Yeah.
Startups apply from all over the country, about 400 or 500 applicants annually, and then they select 5 companies to accelerate over the summer. They invest in your business, they provide phenomenal mentors, top entrepreneurs in Austin, and then they also provide a space. And this year, as Ross mentioned, they've opened on the 18th floor of the Omni, a 20,000 square foot office space that's we'll be doing co-working, supporting growing startups, and accelerating up to, I don't know the number, but it's a lot more than 5.
Yeah, it's a lot more than 5. The details haven't come out. So and it's over a longer period of time. We're gonna be aligned with all the other incubators across the country. So
excellent.
Bigger, doing a co-space, more money, more mentorship. So, you know.
It's
exciting. Yeah,
the space is beautiful. I was in there in March during South by Southwest, and it's really an amazing
awesome
space.
space.
So in the mentoring process, since we have entrepreneurs here, is there something that you find yourself saying a lot? You know, things that maybe are common themes that people are running into as they start companies?
Well, I always worry that we say the same obvious stuff all the time. So, I mean, I'll say it again because I can't help myself, which is just, you know, get market validation, go out there. You know, I think you have to have an inspiration for an idea or something that turns you on. I think that has to exist. But in addition is, you know, you've got to see if there's a real opportunity out there, because if you don't have that, then everything else kind of falls away, right? Then you're just building the product for nobody. So I think that's the key piece is, you know, go out there and find out if it works, and you know, do the lean piece of it. Then I think that's one piece, and then I think this is another concept you hear all the time, which is just the team. Make sure you've got, from the beginning, make sure you've got the right team, and if you don't, and that's hard. I think that's one of the biggest pieces, is to get the right team, especially when you're young, is get the right mix, get the right chemistry that works, and don't suffer with something that doesn't work. So I think it's the team is super important. So those are the two things. And then I think making that connection, you want to have that, I'm great at recruiting. That's what I do a lot of, so I've gotten a lot of experience. I don't know if I'm great at it, but I get a lot of experience at it. What makes that easier is if you've got a great team, right? And then and that team is full of energy and passion for the idea, then people just get around it. It's like, man, I want some more of this. How do I get involved with this? And I think that's a huge advantage that startups have. I mean, it is the advantage to be disruptive. A lot of that comes out of, just raw passion and drive, which is that ability to have impact in a great opportunity. So don't sell yourself short. And I think, I try to get the message across to, when I'm mentoring, is that, I want to be gentle with folks, but I also don't want to waste anybody's time. And that's why, do yourself a favor and make darn sure that what you're doing, there's a real opportunity there. Because you're going to be a great boss, and you can have huge impact, obviously, in a startup, but you need to make darn sure that this is something that is of real value. Because, I think it's hard to do, but it's easier to neglect that piece. So that's where the real work is figure out that there's a real opportunity there. And I mean, if you have to do that with, with construction paper and magic markers, do it just to get it validated, so you know you're headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think that's the key.
Awesome. So at this point, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to pull out my phone and check the Twitter feed really quick. I'm not checking email or anything like that to see if there are any questions there. But in the meantime, Trey?
Who would you turn to in the field of keeping it lean in market validation? Where are some great case studies? Where do you look to informing these questions in these surveys or interviews? Who do you look for?
Well, I think I knew you were going to ask that, and I just read the article in Wired, was actually this month, in what's the lean startup guru now that's, there you go.
Yeah.
So I think that's I liked the article. I thought it was a good article. It was balanced. I'm with so that's where I'd turn to. But I don't think and I think the article talked about it. It's really not, there's not anything. I mean, I think the new part of that is, iterate quick. But I mean, if you were in the startup, in the internet boom,
right.
It was iterate quick. It was get eyeballs. It was acquire customers. It was try stuff quick, because it was a gold rush. Or it had that gold rush mentality. So that's been around for a while. I think it's and it's certainly been around in the startup community, because to survive, you had to make, if it wasn't working, you needed to do something different. They call it a pivot, but back then it was, we need to do something different, either to raise more money or to make the company survive. So you can call it whatever you want. It was, feeding yourself. So I think it's the way it's been, that's who I'd turn to. And Codified, I think it's great stuff. And it really is a competitive advantage if you, in the U.S. with all the venture capital money and that mentality and pushing that forward, it's it's innovative.
Steve and then Chris.
You made a big point out of how important forming a team is.
Mm-hmm.
If I feel like, oh, I'm a little weak in that area, what resources are available to me or that you're aware of? I mean, whether it's books, or meetup groups, or mentors, anything that I could turn to help.
I'm gonna repeat that really quick so it gets picked up on the audio, which is asking where to look for how to build a team, mentoring information on team building, and sorry.
Well, I mean, I think stuff like this, you know, is a great way and to ask for help. I think most people, I've asked for help. I continue to ask for help, and I'm curious. So ask for help at things like this. I think incubators are a great piece. I mean, I think one of the values that we bring at Capital Factory is just that. How can we hook you up? How can we wire you up? And and then I think it's just that it's. I think it also goes down to, I mean, the single piece of advice I can give you. Do that stuff, network, obviously, but the single piece of advice I can give you is just to have that belief. It is at the belief level that, I've got to make this thing work by having a great team. I'm a team member with everyone else, and that belief in the individuals, but the team, it feeds on itself. And, have we all got purpose? Is this something that's worthy? Can we articulate to each other that this is a real opportunity? Have we proven it to each other that's an opportunity? I think that starts, if you get a couple of folks, it'll just start building on itself. So I think it's that belief that team is at the center, and obviously your people are at the center. Because it's a creative culture thing. This is not. It's not a it's not a manufacturing job. Yeah.
Chris?
So I have a question. You spoke a lot about market validation, going out there, the process of the lean startup is actually generating MVP, go out there, do market validation, get in front of the customers as early as possible, as soon as possible, make sure that you're going down the right direction. So say you actually go out there and you do that, and then the next step comes in where you try to establish some type of value that you can actually bring to your customer. But in the case of a startup, you don't have a statistical data that you could fall back on, or you could research or generate, because you, being a startup company, maybe you have a new concept or a former concept, you don't have it. So you kind of hypothesize what the value you could really bring to them really could be, but you don't have any credibility to say you could do that. So if you are in the case of a startup, how would you go about saying, hey, this is the potential value I could really bring to you? This is what I potentially might be able to bring to you as a customer, that you can benefit from trusting me to be your service provider or technological provider.
So, well, I give two answers to that. One is, you can still fall. I mean, you pull that article out. That was actually a good article that gave a couple of the Bible books, Crossing the Chasm, Innovator's Dilemma. These are all these kinds of issues you're talking about, in that if you're out in front of the customers, how do you get them? So that's one piece of it. So you have to have some, there is a tipping point, another book, tipping point when that validation becomes obvious by the customers. Prior to that, and I think this is where, is very relevant to startup folks, is, your passion about the idea. So I think, you don't, to be an entrepreneur, there's all kinds of different entrepreneurs. One flavor of an entrepreneur and one element that you need in your team from an entrepreneur is, you need the impassioned visionary, the impassioned sales guy. And, you need to be selling to the team, and you need to be selling to the customers. So it also becomes if there's some value there. I mean, if there's no value there, it doesn't matter how impassioned you are. I mean, I suppose you could, if you were great at doing sales. You could sell some people, but you might not retain them. But, you know, you have to pull some early adopters over the line. So I think that case is, you know, stick to your guns while you get it validated, you know, and, you know, be confident, you know, in your pitch. Do it. So I think that's the combination I would use. And that pulls people along too, customers in the team, and, you know, where you start and where you end up are two different places.
So I do have a couple questions on Twitter here.
Okay.
And one of them is, what defines a bad boss and what defines a good boss?
Oh, I think, well, it was funny, I think there's, well, a bad boss is just one that you don't work with, right? I mean, it's that, I think that's the employees or the person that works for the boss. I think that's the definition of that. If it's not working, you know, it's just not working. So that's at one level. I think the other level is, you really have to have, for me, and this is just my experience, you know, you need to have a balance of a boss that's a leader and a boss that's a servant, and you know, a leader servant, and then, you know, some part of it is a Mr. Mooney boss. So because folks are looking for both in different situations, you don't want a boss or a leader that's you know, let's talk this out and see what the team when, you know, the website's down. You want a boss, let's go fix the website. You know, let's not talk about that. Or, you know, you need a boss that's got seated in their experience that this is something I don't think we should talk about. This is something that I know. Let's just go do it. Mm-hmm. Trust me. If I'm wrong, then let's have a conversation about it. And then I think there needs to be this servant piece, which is ultimately to scale a team, you have got to get to where the team is successful, and you have to get a charge out of being part of a successful team as the boss and enabling that, because it's you can't. I think you know, as entrepreneurs, you guys are all great individual contributors, right? I mean, it's typically by definition. But you have to escape that, and that can be a struggle of, you know, you have to come to the point where, hey, in order for us to be successful, I have to have a whole bunch of great individual contributors, and I want to hire people that are smarter, that are more capable than me, and there needs to be a boss, a leader, that facilitates that. So I think that's a good boss, and that you know, the good boss is looking out for you know, for the person that works for him.
And this one's about HomeAway in particular. I mean, what are your challenges as you grow post IPO, and, you know, how are you going to ensure that you stay successful in growing?
Well, I think you know, I just don't buy just because you go public doesn't mean you're not lean and mean. I think, you know, having that cycle of a team that feels empowered, that structure, you have to instill that in everything. And you know, that doesn't mean that everything's perfect, but I mean, that's the direction you want to go. So I think, you know, that's the piece, because I've got to, I mean, and my test is me. Mm-hmm. So if it's not working for me, I know it's not working for the other folks.
Right.
So that's my, I think right now, you know, as the technical leader of the company, and with you guys are all the leaders of your company, is, you know, don't try to fool yourself. I try to be the truth. So if there's BS happening there, or I'll ask the team, because they're, you know, and of course some people will always tell you what's wrong. That's okay. it's more important to find the other people that it's like, whoa, if Joe's telling me this, I think we need to look at this. So, I think always be intellectually honest and emotionally honest about it with the team and keep it lean. So if it's getting too big, well, what are we doing about it?
Right.
Tell me what are we doing about it? So don't accept that cliche.
That it's just bound to happen as you get bigger, that you lose certain aspects.
Well, I don't think you have to. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's a fallacy. I just don't think you have to. We're not that big, 1,000 employees. I mean, I was at, and I thought it was telling. I was at the Santa Fe Institute, and they had some guy giving a talk about how these civilizations of the Southwest collapsed, as they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And they found out that in this guy's talk, he said that, when the villages were super small and there was lots of resources, they were way more effective, as far as their form of government. Everything was way more effective. And the bigger communities that had, government and taxation, they weren't effective at all. But as they hunt out all the deer in the game, that the bigger companies, of course I'm making an equation, the bigger tribes or villages became more and more efficient. So, there is this taxation that you can't stay small forever. You have to escape that velocity. So there's some infrastructure or taxation you have to take in order to get big and get efficient. So you have to make that realization. I equated that to companies. So the question is, what's the right amount? What's not enough? I think you need to push in both directions.
Interesting.
So just as a follow-up to that, how do you do that without becoming sort of bureaucratic? Because that's sort of the classic problem. So how have you been able to avoid, to do that growth, the taxation, or whatever, without it ending up being what
Well, I think for me, it's straightforward. It's called BS on. I asked the question that when I ask for something, and I think back to Office Space. I say, now, is this a TPS report, or is this or is this vanity? Is this vanity data, or is this real data? What actions are we going to take off of this? Is this, how does this add value to the company? So those are the questions I ask, and constantly challenge that in everybody, and just not accept it. Because, again, for me, it comes back to, purpose, meaningful work. We don't want to work in that. That's not what we want. And so if everyone feels like they're part of that culture, then they feel like that's part of the culture. Now, not everyone feels that way, but that's what you strive for. And as a good boss, you have to be, allow for that challenge.
So we'll put Lundberg in the bad boss category from
Yeah.
Office Space.
So sorry, just one last follow-up.
I've got two, and then we're gonna.
So do you think the PLTs have kind of contributed to keeping that from happening?
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right way. We're on PLT version 3.0 right now. So we're constantly taking feedback. We actually do Survey Monkeys every quarter on what's working for the PLTs, what's not working for the PLTs. We do a Net Promoter Score every quarter for our engineers, and they're classically cynical, engineers to begin with, but we're doing an NPS score internally on the team, how they feel to recommend the company internally. So we're measuring our stuff, internally. And then we have a big operations. I call it every Monday we have a big operations meeting in development. It's about 40 people from all over the globe, and it goes down multiple levels. And we have all video conferencing, everything's hooked up. And, it's every month I'm for sure go and, hey guys, what's working, what's not working? This is the leadership team, let's get it out. And, there's always something that someone's got, okay, hey, operations, the staging environment's crap here, we need this, or, we're missing the SLAs on this service, it's been chronic, or, I'm wasting time with the friggin' PLTs are asking me the same damn question over and over again. I can't waste my time. So those things are out in the open and discussed. Not ad nauseum, but we want to get those issues got to be get out.
Thank you.
In the back.
I assume that you did learn how to run this company from taking computer science.
Yes.
And so I wanted to know what you went as through your development to be able to get to this point. What leadership qualities, or what have you seen that you had to overcome that you didn't have before has really made a difference for you? And what do you see or look for in people that you want to bring onto your team? What qualities do you look for there?
Well, what did I have to overcome? A lot. I think, I think that as I get older, or more experienced, I would say, older, is that I get less and less fear about my shortcomings. So it's as opposed to when I was younger, I tried to hide them, or I try to compensate for them. I think right now I try to. I don't ignore them. I certainly am aware of my shortcomings, either under stress or how I'm wired to, am I wired for detail? Am I wired for big picture? All these personality profiles. And I try to get folks around me that compensate for those pieces. And then I also try to make it clear to everyone and point that out is like, maybe not a good thing for Ross to be making a decision about. I need some help, so why don't I give this to one of the guys that works for me? So I think it's that acknowledgement of, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and, and being okay with that. So I guess that's one of those things. So that's the internal struggle. All I'm a computer science. I went into that field, and I think the real reason I went into it is because I'm a builder. I like to build stuff. I, build furniture. I'm a welder. I build all kinds of things with metal. I'm a gearhead. I like cars and stuff. I like to build stuff. I like, designing houses, stuff like that. So I'm into building stuff, and software is really great to build, and with big teams, and I get a charge out of that. So that's exciting for me. And I think my assets were, I like to build teams and see other people successful. So I think that's been an asset for me. There's other stuff that you can ask my folks. When I have my staff meeting, I've got I have 7 people that report to me, and I said, it's always, okay, how are you guys going to humble me today? Because, they're always, this is wrong, so I think it's humility. In one word is humility, knowing what you're good at, what you're not good at, and accepting that.
Excellent. So, Diane, last
just
question.
Just a quick question, back to startup. This is around legal and financial advice. So, there's lots of good stuff on validating your product and getting the right team and everything, but, at some point, you've got people that think, okay, here's a good idea and it's catching fire, and they want to be involved. And where, maybe this is something Capital Factory helps with or not, but, at some point you start thinking, gee, maybe I should get an NDA from people on this, or, at what point do you start, you've got people maybe that are saying, I'd like to go ahead and participate in your company and maybe start giving you some seed funding or something, and, it's expensive. These lawyers are $250, $350 an hour, and good legal advice or financial advice is expensive. Where does somebody who's trying to either bootstrap or has a certain amount to begin with go for good advice for that type of thing without giving away the farm, naively very early on?
Now, So what I just talked about is perfectly relevant to my answer right now. So I might not be the best person to ask on this one, because I think, you know, sometimes my passion gets in front of the legal and HR sometimes. So, you know, so I'm quick to react. I'm of action. So I also think as a startup, I think you need to protect yourself. So right now, at least at HomeAway, NDA for everything legal, and it's been that way from day one, because I think that's, once you're an established, you really need to get good legal advice and make sure, I think any seasoned entrepreneur would say, have good attorneys. So that's, and they can be expensive. You know, when you're in the idea phase, you know, I haven't, you know, other than Facebook, I haven't seen any ideas ripped off. You know, there's just so many ideas. It's, you know, it's when it's validated and, man, you've got something and you're like, wow, all I need to do is do this, add this piece to the ingredients, and this is going to take off. Then I'd be very cautious about it. But prior to then, you don't want to waste money, so it's this balance of risk that you have to. I wouldn't worry about it depending on what phase. Now, I would, if you're getting into some, you know, good fences make great neighbors. If you're getting into a relationship with someone, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, great friends, you need to have it clearly written out who's doing,
Who owns what?
who's doing what.
Someone's doing it for free, but they're giving you something that's part of the
Yeah, you need to get that stuff all written down. I mean, when I do advisors for, you know, advisors from some startup companies, I insist that, okay, so how much time do you want from me? I need to know that, because otherwise I'm going to feel like I'm goofing you if I'm not giving you enough time, or let's just be clear on it. So this is how much time, this is how much equity, and I don't even care. It's not a big deal on the equity pieces, but it's really about my time. How much do you want from me a month? Yeah, I can do that, or I can't do that. So I think that those things are important, so there's no disagreements.
So where do you find these good advisors? Like, you know, you say get a good legal person and get a good.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's stuff all over. I don't know, Google, you know, the Google,
Yeah. Just
you know.
see who other friends are using what.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know,
would-
ask that guy. I mean, you guys must have.
I was going to say, I'm going to
Use
jump in
attorneys.
here and, you know, ask the other people who are
Yeah.
here, because, I mean, certainly.
I'm an engineer too, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to now think of the business side.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
one of the great things about having a group of entrepreneurs in a room, is somebody may have already got one.
Yeah, NDAs you can get everywhere. I mean, you can get a standard NDA and just put your stuff in. That's easy, and that's always
Yeah, I'm not so much worried about the NDA, but then when people want to start investing or when they're getting new ID, you know, I need somebody to start looking over stuff, or, you know.
Talk to that guy back there.
Or someone even wants to give me, you know, to invest a certain amount of money, how much do I give them and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
talk
you know?
to entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It depends. I can give you advice on that. There's tons of stuff, and you can get all of that from the web.
I'm going to do the hard moderator thing and call the questions. But I wanted to thank Ross for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for your great questions. If we could all give him a round of applause, please. And then a couple housekeeping things. It's not Startup Grind. If you haven't met someone you didn't know before you leave, if you would like to be introduced to someone, let me know. I will do it. I met most of you already, and I would be happy to introduce you to someone. And there is some pizza over there, so please help yourselves. And Ross will be
I'm
here,
here
I think,
for
a few
other
minutes.
questions or anything, guys.
Okay,
Thanks
thank
so
you
much.
very much.